Howdy folks, welcome to another episode of the Scannell Agenda. Today's show will be on sanitation systems. Again, this is part 3. Today's date is September 22, 2015, and this is show number 34. So I want to start off the show by reading something from Time magazine about solar, which is important to know how things kind of fit together. I have Bell's palsy, so that's if my face looks a little distorted, that's what that's from, Bell's palsy. And that's why I'm wearing this hat. Sorry about that. It's my eye is a little sensitive, my hearing's a little sensitive, and that hopefully I'll get over it pretty soon. They're working on it at Duffy, which I appreciate. They're great at Duffy. All right, now this here in Time magazine, well, this solar stuff has a lot to do with the sewage, water systems, track pipe, or let's say I'm calling this system TUGS, which stands for Tripe Transit, TT, Unified Utility, UU, Green Grid, GG, System, S, or TUGS, TUGS for short. It's simple and it's non-offensive. How'd I come up with that? I don't know. But the unified utility is really the deal here. And that's why I'm getting into solar to start off this show about sanitation, because everything kind of ties in together. Now this is the May 18 edition, May 18, and okay, page 16 here. It's on energy. As more and more homes go solar, conventional utilities are fighting back. Well, let me just say something here. You know, if you have a business and it is a utility, you've sort of been working with the government over decades to provide the public with reasonable cost operations, whether it's electric or water or what have you. These are utilities, and there's a different mindset, and the old timers really had it right, and we got way off the track with Enron and everything else. So our current situation is that we're not good like we used to be good at structuring utilities. And of course I want to change all that with the TUGS system. This is how everything does fit together. So power struggle is more and more. So we don't need these power struggles between the green energy, as I mentioned, and the existing dinosaur utility systems. We just don't need it. It's really going to be a lot of chaos and a lot of expenses. And let's have a smooth operation here in the United States of America so that we can be the model for the rest of the world, so that the world doesn't spin off its axis and go into the sun or something ridiculous. This global warming is a very important thing to be getting on and conquering here. And we can do that. And I'm really not interested in whether it does exist or doesn't. I mean, that's just silly talk to me. Okay, the demand for rooftop solar panels is heating up. And solar, let's say April 30, Elon Musk, blah, blah, blah. And not everyone is embracing the shift to sunshine. Many utilities fear that the electric grid is not prepared to handle a move away from centralized power transmission. All right, so they're not ready. Well, we haven't made things ready for them, and that's kind of important. And you know, with my Love Power Grid Consortium, we can change the name of that too if you like, but you can call it the TUGS Consortium or whatever. But the way I have it structured is that we buy out as we move in with these new upgrades for transit utilities and energy. It's a mega system. These old dinosaur systems cannot compete one-on-one. They just couldn't do it. For instance, if you're using compressed air for the refrigeration and for air conditioning, for instance, just as an example, wow, that's going to hurt utilities tremendously, the electric utilities, rather. It's just going to hurt them tremendously if that ever happened. So we want to structure things rather than have these, big fist fights on the playground. We just want the teacher to come out and get the job done and lay down the law as to what the rules are. So we need the rules, and that's what I'm trying to design here. When I'm designing this system, rules go with that. These are transitional system designs, because even in fisheries, as you're going from one system, which is the current system, to, let's say, a market quota system, you need almost a separate system for the transition to the new system. Has to be part of the whole deal, is how are you going to make a smooth transition. And again, I fall back on the town meeting mindset that I was brought up with. So, if you can scale down and then scale up, and picture yourself at the town meeting with a lot of other people working on it, getting it together, putting a package together, and the people of the town bless it, and then it happens, and then you implement it. So that's my mindset here. So most residential, back to this Time magazine here, most residential solar systems are still connected to the grid, and they still, and they pull from transmission lines when the sun isn't shining, but when their systems generate excess electricity, solar panel owners send their unused power back to the grid for credit. So, of course, the utilities are having nightmares about all this. They just can't sleep at night. They wondering what's wrong, what should they fight, and what shouldn't they fight. And to them, it's kind of a nightmare, all these changes. So when I say we're going to buy out the existing dinosaur utilities as we move in, we'll buy them out for a reasonable price, or a pretty reasonable price, and then you don't have that chaos of this kind of an unsustainable, ridiculous competition between the green energy systems and the dinosaur systems. You'll be able to orchestrate, if we buy them out, or if the Love Power Grid Consortium, it's a combination of public and private, if the consortium buys out the existing utilities, well then, we can structure the changes a lot more efficiently than if we just have this mad competitive spirit, which is a great thing in America. But this is infrastructure here. So it's not like my eye is very irritated. I'm very sorry to be doing this. Okay, back to the grid for credit. This mandated buyback, known as net metering, has been key to the growth of solar, but utilities say they lose out by having to purchase back solar power at retail rates when they would normally buy power cheaper, or normally blah, blah, blah. So you can see what a nightmare they have in here. So the battle over solar is still small because, and this is really important now to think about this, less than 1% of U.S. power comes from solar. But they can see the writing on the wall, I'm sure, these utilities and everyone else too. So we got to plan, P-L-A-N, plan for this stuff. And it takes effort, and you can't be a coward if you want to be a planner, because always people are going to be, super offended. Any new idea is just an attack, It's not just an idea of how we're going to work things out in the future. No, you're attacking someone else. You're goring somebody's ox, as they say. So it's not fun being a planner. You get attacked, and you get, good planner. My dad knew this, and I know this. And all the good planners know that it's not a popularity contest to have any vision at all. Now they're talking about Elon Musk here, and he's going to be doing batteries. This is old news now. This is May 18, 2015, so it's not exactly current. Now it goes into, in this article, turning the rays into energy, which I'm not going to get into the mechanics of the PV cells, and then, you know, powering a home, and then the feeding of the grid with the electric utility. And the allure of rooftop solar from an environmental aspect, to get into that, about how much, and this is about the externalized negatives now, economically speaking. Well, how much this is saving us in the emissions of toxic waste. So that's an important part of the puzzle, is all these externalized negatives, and it's so important in fisheries management. It's ridiculous. You know, I can't get people on this page of, you know, we've got to watch these values and put a price on the values, as Fred Jennings, Harvard economist, would say. I worked with him a little bit on fish folk. You got to put a price on positive and negative values. So everyone complains that, you know, you get to just pollute and that's it. You know, there's no price on that. Well, that's all got to be addressed in a coherent, comprehensive, complex system, of which I love design work on these systems. So the utilities are pushing back. So here's kind of like a feedback loop. The utility customers buy solar panels. Number one, fewer customers are left to pay for the utilities infrastructure. And then number three, utilities lose the revenue. And number four, the utilities raise the rates on the existing customers. So I was mentioning to someone the other day that actually this net metering has to be subsidized on both ends, both the utility end, subsidize that, and the homeowner or business end, and subsidize that. But you got to have a long range plan before you get into doing that. You got to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted as to why you would do that. But I think that is the key. But in order to do that, your utilities really have to have good long-range knowledge that they're safe. They're on safe ground. If they're going to pitch in and go with this green energy, they got to know that we're going to be right there with them. And these are stockholders I'm talking about. We just don't want these battles here. So anyway, a lot of the systems, your home systems and your business systems, the solar has to tie into the whole, so to speak. Now, what we don't want to think of is just electricity, because solar can be solar thermal. Now, solar thermal can work very well with algae, sewage treatment, I call it, but water treatment. So, okay, where was I now? I left off last week. I'm going to get back into that. All right. I think I left off with some kind of dry straw seed base. As I have it written up here, the dry straw is used as a sponge of sorts for urine, and I talked about, you know, the proper recipes for urine cake, and then a lot of these are biosystems that are almost waterless. I don't want to say waterless. There's nothing wrong with using water, but water is becoming increasingly the holy grail of what we really need to save the earth. And sewage systems that go with the water Speaking of the Holy Grail, this has nothing to do with anything other than I bought it for $4. My mom used to like to do that at a yard sale. Now, the water systems and the sewage systems are very closely related to each other. Of course, as we all know that, the piping, we send our sewage away, generally, or we send it into the soil. All right, so the dry straw, this is simple stuff, and I'm not saying I'm the original thinker here. A lot of this stuff I come up with has probably been thought of. And when I was 18, I had a patent search done for a windmill, because I was working on windmills when I was 18, and it wasn't novel. I had a horizontal windmill, horizontal shaft windmill that I made a model of it, and I said, wow, and it was not novel, it had been done before. I still like them, but, okay. So switchgrass, starter beds and the switchgrass can be used, and other kinds of grasses can be used to 2 or 3 urine soaks, and then, that's a big deal. A lot of our waste products come out in the urine, and, we can capture that with the gray water too, and the urine, which I call gray pee, as I was mentioning. And here I've got flatbed size, 40 by 10 by 10, stackable, all that. A lot of this is low tech. All right, concave closed system planter. This is for berms, or anytime you got retaining walls or berms. Could be circular for hills. It's a terracing system. This is more beehive stuff. And this is basically floating systems. And the beauty of that is, and this is a city block area where you've got your trees into all this either black water or algae water, and then you're producing something valuable, not just oxygen for the air, and you're not just taking up CO2, but you're actually, if you engineer this right and you design it right, you're producing bamboo, switchgrass for fuels, willow can be wet all the time, but bamboo is very valuable. Or it can be just other kinds of things that we grow that we can use in closed systems. What's this? A 240-foot sewage puck, P-U-C-K. That's a drawing of these beehive systems that are on a barge floating in an algae pond. Here's one, algae to carp, C-A-R-P. Okay, 200 sewage puck, more of that same stuff. Sometimes I'm working on something for a week or more and call upon all the other designs and see if they fit together. The good thing about a beehive is that, we've known that it's worked for the purpose for many years here on the Cape. It's a simple beehive block, but you can embellish that, and such that you can basically dismantle it and then reset it up, because these things have a timeline, these beehive things, and your soil gets worn out with all this sewage material. So you need to be able to plan from cradle to grave, as they say. Concentric spike support, sewage reef, aquaculture. What's this? Oh, okay. It's a big greenhouse with a windmill in the middle. Yeah. Sewage evaporation at sea. I don't think much of that idea. Large cut tube. These are structural. Biotreatment on the cheap. How to do this stuff as cheap as you can. That combines housing with bamboo grow out. Roof alley algae. I like that one because we have a lot of rooftops here. And it's a mirror system to direct the sun into the algae that's at the peak of your roof. It's either new construction or retrofit. Uses the sewage chips in a bag. It's just a household system where you have a little pond and a couple of pumps and a mixer, and you got chips, you know, the wood chips and so on and so forth. So biotreatment at home is an interesting concept. There's some areas are rural and you got plenty of land, and it really isn't all that feasible to do centralized systems if you're in rural areas. But there again, you know, you want good sustainable systems too. Sewage chips in a bag, and this is for inoculant purposes, because you, just like your gut, there's a lot of talk about that, your gut, and it's so important. We're getting into that medically. And just as important as it is in medicine, it's just as important in sewage, you know, your inoculant that you're using and the little critters. I worked with these guys over at the Marine Lab, and we had our own phycologist, and his job, a phycologist is someone that works with algae. So his job was to grow the algae, and the algae was the feed for the baby, tiny shellfish. And of course, you know, you just can't say, okay, give me, there's a lot of difference in algae, and there's a whole science on that, you know, feeding the shellfish and all that. Polyethylene puck as a model. You're into algae, lower your taxes. Oh, okay, so this is basically, because we have to transition to these biosystems, your taxation system wants to be there as kind of a foundational base. Save water, less flushing. Don't we have a water shortage? Well, maybe not so much here on the Cape, but as I say, I'm proposing a nationalized water system to go with this tugs. Algae ponds, feed the fuel grass, but you gotta make this possible with the taxation and all that stuff. Looks like my 5-minute mark. Gotcha. Sell water at 33.5% above cost to fund the sewage. You know, this is just a rough idea, but you got to do what you got to do to make this happen. This is infrastructure, so individuals can do only so much. And that reminds me that we're really not pushing the front envelope on research and development for a lot of this stuff as much as we should. That is a toilet system in the house. 7-boat planter for an algae pond. Sub-bladder water beds. Amazing. Who would think of this? Using an algae bladder under your own bed as a sewage treatment. But it would work. I can see where it would work, or could work. You know, would work, could work, but what does it mean? Oh, I thought it said MV. I was saying, what does MV stand for? Of course, it's Martha's Vineyard. MV, closed system plant effluent usage. Stop Great Pond pollution. remember getting a tour over there, and you know, the sewage plant dumping into a salt pond. So send the treated waste and water to the greenhouses, holding tanks, you know, different operation in August and peak operations. And drains down. Okay, so designing something to save a salt pond is a very important thing. You don't want to be putting bad water into a salt pond. I hope they got that solved already, because that was years ago that I was over there. Sewage, tripe, farm, okay, force sewage under pressure. Well, force sewage under pressure. Flow grid for biofiber production. Now, must last and absorb for 60 years. Maybe robotic root cleaner. So, talking about grids for biofiber production. These would be pipe grids, and they would also be under like a thick grove of maple trees, let's say. So you want to have maintenance on those piping systems, and they got to be maintained. So that's what that is about. Fiberglass may be best, but it's expensive. You know, high density polyethylene may be the best way to go. Who knows, or some combination. So anyway, this is an incredibly tedious and boring thing to be talking about all these, you know, what I'm doing here is brainstorming with these sewage possibilities. And here's one. I'll start the show with this double fiberglass old boat bio sewage tank. So we got sewage tanks sitting around and we're not using them in the form of old boats. All right, thank you for watching another episode of the Scannell Agenda. Thanks very much.